What if passports were stamped with experiences instead of places? With Luxury Gold, each journey brings you unforgettable passport moments. In Japan, join a private sushi making class with a master chef and witness the cherry blossoms alongside a tree doctor. Experiences like these are the golden threads that make up your Luxury Gold journey. To learn more, contact your travel advisor or visit luxurygold.com/Japan.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. Kieran, how are you? You were all excited the last time we spoke because you were off to see that there Blur with Paul Weller and the selector. Was it a good gig?
Oh, it was absolutely amazing. Between us, myself and the Baroness knew every single song that was sung, of which the Baroness knew one song from the three artists. But yeah, I love the selector. I think Pauline Black is an amazing performer.
Yeah.
And Paul Weller was on good form. And then Blur, it was quite emotional. Damon Albarn broke down in tears at one stage.
Wow, really?
It clearly meant a lot to him because they've not been. Yeah, we're selling out Wembley Stadium 2 nights in a row.
Yeah.
Truly fantastic. Yeah, absolutely made up.
Well, talking of the Baroness, I was going to say partly at her insistence, but 100% at her insistence. We're having a break in the next couple of weeks. There will still be pods for you, of course. One of them is the long-awaited Nostalgia pod, where we'll be talking about the start of the Premier League, probably the most seismic thing to happen to football finance in the past century. And if you think Kieran sounds a little bit giddy, it's because as part of that pod, we've just interviewed a man who was very much at the centre of changing the image of football at the same time. And I'm a big fan of this person. Kieran is a massive fanboy of this person. So would you like to tell us who it is, Kieran?
Yes, it's James Brown. Anybody who was around in the early 90s. First of all, James was editor at the NME, and then he went on to form Loaded. And when that happened, I was about 29. It was just seismic. Sort of adult articles written on just insane things. So for anybody that loved music and football and wanted to know a bit more about the world, Loaded was an absolutely brilliant publication. So he's written this book called Animal House about his life, and he's been very honest in it. The ups and the downs and the challenges that he's had due to lifestyle consequences of the time. It's a great book. For me, I was in pure fanboy mode.
But also, he had some really interesting and slightly unexpected, I thought, insight into the way football changed at the time. So I think you'll look forward to the interview. I've never heard Kieran get so excited because James Brown mentioned John Peel and the Jesus and Mary chain and the song Love on the Terraces in the same sentence. I thought, like a Victorian lady swooning, I thought I was going to have to get the smelling salts to bring Kieran back. And then I got very excited because literally the last thing James said in the interview was, then I tackled Dr. Robert from the Blow Monkeys from behind and he stayed down for ages. So the perfect way to end an interview. We will look forward to that. We've got a couple of special interview pods and question pods for you. We're only away for 2 weeks, so there's 3 normal pods that we won't be doing, but we have more than adequate replacement for you. Today's pod, I'm almost reluctant to start today's pod, Kieran, because our excitement of what we've just been up to won't be matched by the fans of 2 clubs that we've been talking about for a long, long time, and things are not getting any better for Southend United.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we're recording this at 12:30 on Wednesday afternoon. Now, Southend United were in fact in court this morning, and there's a little bit of good news in the sense that the judge was looking at a winding up order from HMRC. There was a genuine chance, I think, that Ron Martin, the club owner, who's one of those people that just seems to get off on brinksmanship. He's managed to secure another 42 days grace with regards to the £275,000, which is unpaid and owing to HMRC. That has been done effectively on the proviso that during those 42 days, the sale of the club will be completed. I believe that there are some outstanding issues with regards to the stadium. And from day one of ownership, Ron Martin's objective has effectively been to flatten Roots Hall and replace it with residential and move the club out of town. And he's a property person. I'll try and temper some of my views on him, but things are getting quite frosty. A group of fans turned up outside his house a couple of days ago, and if that's done peacefully and courteously, that there's nothing wrong with that. But by all accounts, he did say that the sale is taking longer than expected due to the stadium issues. They finally got round. They published accounts for 2020 and 21, but not for 2022. You've got some people on payroll who have not been paid for up to 4 months, which is pretty inexcusable. As a result of that, they're under a transfer embargo. They're not allowed to sign players unless the number of players in the squad goes beneath 16. Now, players are leaving because they want some certainty. And with the ridiculous situation last week, I think we spoke last week and we said, well, the players are not in training because they're effectively on strike because they hadn't been paid their June wages. Those June wages were paid. They came in for training, and I might have misread this, but I might not. Effectively, they were allowed to do sort of conditioning training, but they weren't allowed to tackle each other because nobody's paid the medical bill. So they got no medical cover. And this is just how ridiculous it is. Yes, they can go to training, but you can't go in the showers because Ron Martin's not paid the gas bill. So therefore, the water bill, and the water's been turned off. And so many of these things take us back to the behaviour of Steve Dale at Bury, which effectively, was one of the sort of the sparks which lit producer Guy to get us together and to start this show. And I think it's indicative that the more things change, the more things stay the same as far as football ownership is concerned. Which is such a shame. There are brilliant owners out there, and then there's not brilliant owners.
I realise I might be clutching at straws here, Kieran, but I'm trying to find some good news for Southend fans. So the 42-day stay of execution, if you like. Could be good news because it does indicate that there is a serious buyer and that the club is going to change hands. But the bad news is if there isn't, I dread to think what happens if there isn't, because it doesn't seem to me like he's finally got the money to pay this tax bill.
Or he's got it and he's not willing to give it to Southend to pay it. I mean, there was, and we've got the start of the season coming up, and we've got the integrity of the sport. And you remember, it was only 4 years ago that Bury started the season, effectively putting out an under-17 team for the first few fixtures, and they were being absolutely tonked all over the place. And that wasn't fair on the kids who were playing the matches, and it wasn't fair potentially on the other teams in the division because they were saying one of their potential promotion rivals, dishing it out to Bury. So there have been a lot of challenges. The National League, I understand, have had a meeting with the local MP. There was representations from DCMS there, from the Shrimpers Trust. I think Mark Ives, who we've interviewed from the National League. So there clearly is a degree of seriousness being taken as to the plight of the club. But ultimately, this comes down to cash and whether Ron Martin is going to continue to play this game. And it is a game.
Yeah. It is, but it's not, though, is it, Kieran? That's the thing.
Well, it's a game to him because he's not the one that's gone 4 months without wages.
Yeah.
And you do feel very sorry for the people there. And we've said from day one, it doesn't matter whether you're a Southend fan or a Manchester United fan, a Barcelona fan, a Bury fan, you love your club, and yeah, it sounds twee, but it's not. You don't. The thought of going to bed knowing that you might not have a football club to support in 24 hours' time is a horrible, horrible one.
And the fact as well, it's almost like a sitcom, but the idea of players not tackling each other, it's not to do with medical insurance, I imagine. It's also not damaging some of the few assets they have that they could potentially sell. Scunthorpe United are the other club we've been talking about way too much, Kieran, and their latest accounts at least are out. But do they make any better reading for Scunthorpe fans?
Well, these are the accounts for 21-22. Now, so therefore they represent effectively the last full year of the previous owner, Peter Swan. My view of Peter Swan was that I don't think he was a very good decision maker, but he did put an awful lot of money into the club. In the last 10 years of ownership of Scunthorpe United, the club lost £28 million. We're talking, that's a huge amount of money. And that was because wages on average were £140 for every £100 that came in. So you were losing a fortune before you kicked the first ball. What's disappointing for me is that a lot of criticism can be levelled his way. I get that from the Scunthorpe fans. At least I could always read the accounts and work out why the numbers were as bad as they were. Well, we've now got new owners who have come in and they've said, well, we're not going to do that. We're going to go down the route of minimum disclosure of information. So all that I can work out is the club did lose money. Realistically, they've probably lost in that season, I think, around about 600 grand, which by Scunthorpe standards is actually not too bad. There's, I think, having a lack of transparency is an issue. What we have seen is that there appears to be ongoing discussions with regards to the sale of the stadium. So David Hilton is the new owner of the football club, but Peter Swan was still the owner of the stadium. I've seen documents in the past few days which indicate that the original offer for the stadium of £3 million appears to be still taking place. I think, in effect, until that sale has gone through, then the new owners are willing to pay £10,000 a month in rent, provided Peter Swan does not oppose the planning permission which the new owner has in respect of the stadium. And I think he's trying to put up some industrial units or to generate rent or something else in that way. It all seems a bit strange. Originally, I think we discussed this a couple of months ago, there was something called the 1899 scheme, where the club was going to try to find 1,899 people to put up £1,899 each, because that's the year that the club was formed. But that looks like there's been a very low take-up. So I think that was going to be used to fund the acquisition of the stadium. So how it's now going to be funded, we don't know. It's messy. I know some journalists that have tried to run stories but been unable to run the stories for a variety of reasons, and that adds to the frustration.
You know what my short-term memory is like, Kieran? It was Scunthorpe recently that asked for people to volunteer to be a director, wasn't it?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So you would hope that would help. Although, again, there's a myriad of stories going round. We discussed at the time that if people were going to volunteer their time that would be great. Social media, where I think you have to take everything with a modicum of wariness and weariness these days. I was sent messages to say, well, effectively you had to go and pay a joining fee to become a director. But I don't know whether that's the case or not. Right. And to be fair, there have been some new directors appointed at Scunthorpe, and I think that's for the benefit of the club as a whole.
And producer Guy would like us to point out that the new owners of Scunthorpe are, of course, perfectly legally entitled to release only minimum information, aren't they?
Yes, absolutely. My view is that if somebody was trying to persuade me to put £1,900 into a football club, and I've had a bit of a beef with regards to Peterborough United, Peterborough had the posh bond, then full and frank and an early disclosure, because you want people to be stakeholders in the club financially, then I think you have a duty to them as well to be straight up with them. But this is a bit disappointing. It doesn't cost you anything to publish the full numbers, and also, as far as the new owners are concerned, this is all to do with the previous year under Peter Swan. So you're effectively not reporting on yourself anyway.
Do you know, Kieran, I'm looking at the list of stories for the rest of this podium, and you know I like to inject a bit of humour if possible, Kieran, or as some people would say, crowbar a bit of humour if possible. But looking at today's list of stories, I'm not entirely sure where I can do that. So we might have to have a 2-minute chat about Dr. Robert from Blow Monkeys again, essentially, and Love on the Terraces. I presume, Kieran, serious drinking. They were.
Yes.
I presume you've seen.
They were Palace fans, weren't they?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay.
Carter and the Unstoppable Sex.
I know Carter were.
They were Palace fans. Oh, I should doubt. Not to my knowledge, but I presume you'll have seen the Serious Drinking tribute band recently, Kieran, wouldn't you?
No, I haven't. Not yet. Not yet. It's on my list.
In the, I went out of a girl once who claimed to have had a one-night stand with Dr. Robert from the Blow Monkeys. I've never had that verified, and I suspect I will go to my grave not doing so, unless Dr. Robert thinks to himself, hello, they've got a nostalgia pod on next week with James Brown. I might tune into that and see if he mentions the time he tackled me. If you're listening, Dr. Robert, that would be... Oh, no, you'll be listening to next week. Never mind. One of our very first stories, Kieran, back in the early days, was a slightly odd debt owned by Carlisle United, and it's still rumbling on.
Yeah, this is very, very surreal. Cardiff... were sort of quasi-owned by a company called Carlisle.
Yeah.
Were owned by a company called Edinburgh Woolen Mill, who went into administration. And Carlisle owed EWL over £2 million. And what happened was the administrators sold the debt to a company called Purepay. And what Purepay have been doing is they've been doing things. A, they've been charging interest on the debt, but B, they've been refusing to talk to Carlisle with regards to the repayment. And therefore we've had, interest rates have gone up. So Carlisle are now paying, I think it's £3,500 a week, or they're accruing £3,500 a week in interest as far as this debt. But if I owed money to a bank and I wanted to repay it, I'd pop into the branch, if there's such a thing as a branch at a bank these days, and say, I want to give you some money. Here it is. But Purepay refused to come to the table. They just won't enter into discussions. And the guy that owns Purepay, who's sort of pretending that he isn't, is a very, very successful businessman called Philip Day, and I think he used to own the likes of Jaeger and sort of many places on the high street. He's a billionaire in his own right. He's done fantastically well. I think he lives officially in Switzerland, but he's also got a place in Dubai. He's reaped the rewards of being very good at what he does. And in my research on him, apparently he bought his first helicopter from Mike Ashley, another so a tenuous link to football there. Mike Ashley's chopper. I think that's a Viz cartoon strip, isn't it? But that's for another show. So it's just a weird one, and Carlisle is certainly one of the better clubs, in my view, in terms of the board of directors, the level of transparency. They're very open. Their accounts, from my point of view, are absolutely brilliant. I give them 6 stars out of 5. The level of transparency there. And they've also got a habit of, when they have meetings with supporters groups, they put up all the minutes, and that allows people to work out exactly what's taking place. So it's messy, but Carlisle is not a wealthy area, and it would just be useful if they managed to get round the table together and get it sorted. And it's exactly the same with Scunthorpe. People talking is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. And why Purepay seem so reluctant to move forwards in relation to this is beyond me.
I'm still trying to get my head around the idea of a highly successful businessman called Day. He must be one of the Berkshire Days, I imagine. Kieran is certainly not from my branch of the family. What's the... do we know, Kieran? Sorry, I got momentarily distracted by 3 magpies in the garden, and I was trying to work out whether that 1 for sorrow, 2 for joy, 3 for a girl. No, that doesn't get us any further.
Were you a magpie or Blue Peter growing up?
For some reason, my mum's only attempt at making us middle class when I was growing up was to make me watch Blue Peter.
Oh, really?
She thought that was class. She used to make me watch Blue Peter, and all right. So I used to have the occasional historical story, but let's face it, I was never going to make an advent calendar out of coat hangers. But I was very much a magpie fan. But I'm afraid that was mainly because of Susan Stranks' habit of not wearing a bra. And at the age of 11, that's the sort of thing that makes you far more interested in watching a show rather than the antics of a baby elephant on Blue Peter. I'm not proud of that. You've completely distracted me now. I did once wonder whether the magpie thing goes up high. It's like, if you see 25 magpies, it means you're going to get a visitor from a stranger. I don't know. So it's again, how easily are we distracted? How much do Carlisle United own on the debt, Kieran? Because it's 4 years, and they were paying it then. They're still paying it. Interest is going. Do we know how much they still have to pay?
It's the most up to date figure is £2.7 million.
Now, it's a sizable amount. So it's not the sort of amount of money they can suddenly say, right, let's pay this off.
No. It's not buckets outside the it's not buckets outside the ground. Let's get it sorted. So it's and what they'd be looking for is some form of schedule. Or ideally, for Philip Day to say, "I tell you what, I'm a big-hearted soul. I understand the importance of Carlisle United to the identity of the town and the surrounding area. I'm going to write off the debt."
Yeah, I'm not saying they're always mutually exclusive, Kieran, but highly successful businessman / big-hearted soul doesn't often go together, does it? Is it purely? I imagine it's in Purepay's interest, isn't it? If interest rates are going up so much, it's in their interest not to have it paid back.
Yes, but if I'm a billionaire, $3,500 a week on a loan ain't going to touch the sides, is it?
That's true.
So I just can't understand the logic behind the strategy.
Well, maybe he's distracted by all those helicopter flights.
True.
Could be. Huddersfield Town have got some money coming their way, hopefully.
Yes. Huddersfield have just published their accounts for 21-22. So as you can imagine, I was at Giddy City at the Company's House website when they came out at 6:10 on a Monday morning. Look, and somebody once said to me, I was giving a talk recently, and somebody came up to me after and said, "You do realise you're the most rock and roll thing in accountancy." I'm going, I really, that's. We've got an interview with James Brown coming up. That's a rock and roll lifestyle. And if you read the book, me, it's sort of if I have all the same colours from a pack of fruit pastels together, I feel I'm being quite daring. But that's about as far as it goes. So yes, I was looking at the accounts, and I think Huddersfield. I think fans have been a bit disillusioned since the club was relegated, and they've not got back as clearly they wanted to get back to the Premier League. But I think they've used the parachute payments in the way that they've been intended to do. They've managed to get all of the high earners off the wage bill now. Income was down a third in 21-22. They used that to reduce the wages. And what they've done is that they've sold players. So the total cost of the squad went down from about £20 million to sort of £2 million over the course of the season. And they've sold players But what they're doing is what we're seeing time and time again. They're selling players on credit. So, yes, they've got a little bit of cash in the bank. But the good news, to which you referred at the start of the question, is that they got around about £12 million, which is due to them from player sales, which will come in over 22, 23 and beyond. So that, in addition to sort of the tapering of the parachute payments, at least that means from a cash flow point of view, that should be okay. And they've got the new owner, Kevin Nagel, who's come in and has bought the club from Dean Hoyle. So I think if I was sort of assessing their finances for a championship club, I'd certainly say that they were in they'll be in an upper quartile in terms of sustainability and yes, all of the dull things, which are actually quite good in terms of having confidence that your club's still going to be there.
Now, this next story, Kieran, has taken on a slightly spooky aspect now because it was just going to be a story about proof of your theory that Mike Ashley is actually, whatever you think of him as a football club owner, is a very, very successful businessman. But not only does it turn out that Philip Dave of Purepay bought his first helicopter from Mike Ashley, but Mike Ashley's company is called MASH Holdings. And of course, the opening credits of the seminal sitcom MASH featured helicopters. This is just wheels within wheels, this story. But MASH Holdings have made quite the profit from selling Newcastle United. Yes,
they've made a profit of £195 million. So the accounts confirmed that the club had been sold for £305 million. I think that was the number that was doing the rounds. I must confess, we said that Mike Ashley is good at making money. That's looking a bargain from the PIF point of view. If you think that Manchester United are potentially going for 5 to 6 billion, then Saudi PIF acquired Newcastle United for 1/20th of the price of Manchester United. Now, Manchester United is a bigger brand. Nobody's denying that, but nobody would say that Manchester United is 20 times the size of Newcastle United. So it looks like a good deal from PIF point of view. Mike Ashley, he knows how to make money, and he's very, very good at buying and selling. And I went into the full accounts of MASH Holdings and all of the deals that he's done over the year. He's even bought he's bought Bob Woolmer's old company. Bob Woolmer, God rest his soul, I didn't even know he had a company, but it's the fact that he's able to spot brands and to buy them cheap and sell them at higher prices is where he is in the pantheon of rich individuals in this country today.
Bob Woolmer, the cricketer.
Bob Woolmer, I can only presume so. I can't think of anybody else.
What's the company?
I presume it's some sort of sport. It could be a sports tourism company or something like that. Okay. But it's Bob Woolmer was. I remember him making his debut, batting at number 8 for England. Wow! And then he sort of became an opener. He was a proper late 70s, 80s cricketer. Dour but effective.
Yeah. Do you know what? We're turning to Wikipedia on this show, aren't we? This is your go-to source for possibly 100% accurate information. At last, Kieran, we're able to bring Man United fans some closure for Man United fans. Unfortunately, it's closure on their policy on ticket touting.
Yes, this is an intriguing one. Now, I've mentioned on one or two occasions before that historically touting at Old Trafford has been quite lucrative because I know one person who, and I've not lived in Manchester now for a couple of years, but he used to be able to get up to 80 tickets for a whole home match at Old Trafford. And he says, if I'm honest, Kieran, it's when the likes of Brighton and Palace are coming to Old Trafford because the regular United fans, especially if the match has been changed to a 12:30 kickoff on a Saturday or a 2 p.m. kickoff on a Sunday, they're pretty indifferent. Yeah. So they'll find somebody. So he used to have a proper living in this. Now with the move to digitisation and sort of with respect to tickets, things have become more complex with the touts. United, I would say, are one of those clubs that have historically had more of a laissez-faire approach 2 tickets, and that goes for both home and away fans. Trying to get an away ticket for Manchester United is sort of you enter the Harry Potter era of dark arts in case of who you know and points and so on. But what Manchester United have done is that they've changed the terms. They're saying we're concerned that fans are selling their tickets at above face value and making money on the side. And what they had said last season was that you had to attend physically at least 50% of home games, because like many clubs, they've got a resale area on the website. Yeah. Now, they're increasing that to 75%. And if fans are saying, well, it wasn't matches, at one stage, and this is where I felt this is a bit Big Brotherish, they were checking fans on CCTV to check it was them.
Wow.
Or they were threatening to do so. And I think that there was a bit of a hoo-ha, and rightly so. You're football fans. We're not in Squid Game or anything like that. But what now appears to be the case, and I've seen this quoted from United fans, and I know it was in one of the dailies as well, was that if fans were wanting to say, well, I can't attend a particular match, Manchester United says, okay, we'll buy back the tickets from you. And if you, the fan, you say, well, I've got a ticket which would normally cost 40 quid, 50 quid, whatever it's going to be, and if I go and sell it to 70 quid to a couple of tourists, you're a bad person. What Manchester United will now do is they'll buy back the fans from you. They'll give you your 1/19th of your season ticket, and then they will resell that ticket into the hospitality sector. Now, this isn't going to one of the posh lounges. This is effectively being taken to a warehouse in Trafford Park. You get a free pie. You probably get a chance to have a selfie with Mickey Thomas or Gary Pallister, or something like that, and they'll charge you 350 to 400 quid for the privilege.
Right.
So who's the tout in all of this?
Yeah.
If I do that as a fan and make 20 quid, I'm a bad person, according to the Glazers. If Manchester United do it, it's just part of the supply and demand. And this is the Americanization. I'm not saying this in a negative way, the Disneyfication. Certainly as far as the attitude towards tickets for events are concerned in the USA, this is seen as the norm. And I had a discussion with some people on social media, and they were saying for NFL, for some of the big matches in the NBA, they can effectively sell 1 or 2 tickets during a season, and that will cover them for the rest of the season in terms of getting their season ticket prices back. And they use the places, I think it's like Viagogo and Seatwave and so on, which are licensed ticket touting sites. And I'll hold up my arm. If there's a particular gig that I want to go and see, I'll be a hypocrite here because I say I don't particularly like them. I will pay. If it's a band that I'm desperate to see or a performer, then I'll pay the touted prices, and you pay it through your teeth. And that is becoming more and more common. We've just seen the Taylor Swift tickets go on sale for next summer. Well, some of the prices being asked, and this is through these websites, is quite astronomical. And you've worked in the entertainment industry all your life. I can add up. We are both fully aware that for some artists, what will happen is that the manager or the management team of a particular artist will say, well, we're selling 60,000 tickets, but we want 10,000 of those for ourselves. And then we will sell them on these particular websites and make even more money than we're making already. So it's an awkward one. I don't personally have an issue with a regular fan selling the odd ticket and making a few extra quid on the back of it. If the clubs are then saying, well, that's not acceptable, but it's acceptable for us to it, I think it stinks of hypocrisy.
I'm afraid the only thing I took out of that, Kieran, was Taylor Swift, which I seem to have written down about 100 times in a kind of Jack Nicholson style. Red Rum, Taylor Swift, Taylor Swift, Taylor Swift. You don't see Taylor Swift?
No, I'm not going to see Taylor Swift.
Oh, good. It was an example. It was just an example.
Yeah, it was an example.
Oh,
yeah.
thank God. Right, I'll start crossing them
Yeah,
out.
no, I've not sold out.
Yeah, okay. Many clubs from the Championship and in the Premier League, most in the Premier League, now have a waiting list for season tickets, Kieran. But enterprising fans at one Premier League club have found a way around it.
Well, yes, they have. It's not a cheap solution, but it is a solution. So here we're talking Arsenal. If you want a season ticket for Arsenal, realistically, there's a 5 to 10 year waiting list. So, clearly people will be frustrated at that. However, when Arsenal moved to the Emirates, they borrowed some money from sort of the traditional sources, but they also borrowed money from Arsenal fans in the form of a debenture bond, which is effectively where the fan lends the football club money. And we got debentures at Wimbledon, and they bring privileges. And one of the privileges of owning an Arsenal debenture is that it gives you the right to buy a season ticket. So what we've seen over the course of the last year is the price of these debentures, because Arsenal had a fantastic year, and they're in the Champions League in 23-24. We've seen the price of these debentures quadruple. And then they're now going for up to £12,500. They were around about £3,000 a year ago. And people are saying, well, I'm willing to pay that. And it's a bit like, I've never been a golf player, but I've had friends that have played golf. When you join a golf club, you have to pay an entrance fee, and then you go and pay your annual subs. This looks like something like people paying $12,000 just for the privilege of subsequently being able to go and buy a season ticket at Arsenal. And let's face it, Arsenal season ticket prices are pretty eye-watering for those who are on the season ticket rota. So that's what we've got. We've now got it's not ticket touting; it's a secondary market for debentures. These are loans which aren't going to be repaid by Arsenal for a very long time, and you can effectively sell the money which is owed to you by Arsenal at far in excess of its face value.
Yeah, there is another way to access seats at Arsenal, Kieran, and that's to become a comedian or actor and become a client of at least 2 showbiz agencies I know who have between them 8 season tickets at Arsenal, which they use as a way of impressing potential clients and potential broadcasters and so on. So I presume that's the same at quite a few Premier League clubs where some of the more expensive, shall we say, hospitality seats are taken up en masse. You mentioned the Champions League, Kieran, and that takes us to the Conference League and our penultimate story, which is a story, again, we mentioned last week, the story about the FA selling their broadcasting rights to the Premier League, which is a story I think that should have been getting much greater profile. And this next story about a world-famous football club, Kieran, seems to have almost completely slipped under the radar, and this should be a huge story.
Yes, this is a classic case of gaming the system. Now, Juventus were involved in, I don't know what the Italian is for financial shenanigans, but Juventus were certainly involved in them to the extent that they suffered a points deduction in 22-23. And this was to do with various issues to do with payroll, to do with transfers and so on. And to be fair to the Italian authorities, they did investigate. They're not waiting 4 years to make a decision. And they said to Juventus, right, you're having a points deduction on the back of this. And as a consequence of that, Juventus dropped out of the Champions League places and into the Europa Conference League places. Now, you or I, Kevin, chance to play in Europe, Conference League, we'd snap it up. We'd be absolutely delighted. But
well, yes, Kieran, as we all know, one of us has the chance to do that, Kieran. So yes, let's move on. But yeah, I'll take it or leave it, Kieran. To be honest, Europe I'm perfectly happy finishing somewhere between 12th and 14th.
Probably 12th, actually.
Crack on.
But what Juventus have said, because you don't make any money in the Europa Conference League, in the UEFA Conference League, what we're going to do is, as well as being investigated by the Italian authorities, Juventus were being investigated by UEFA. And what Juventus said, look, we're going to hold our hands up. Yeah, we weren't necessarily particularly well behaved. Tell you what, we will effectively voluntarily take a 1-year ban from European competition. And that will save you the cost of an investigation, and you won't have to go and get the lawyers involved. We'll just say, okay, we weren't as good as we should have been. Give us a 12-month ban. We'll take it on the chin. And the reason why they've done this, and we've seen this before from Italian clubs, is that they don't actually particularly want to play on a Thursday night and be going to Albania and Uzbekistan and so on. Because their main focus is that they'd actually worked out that they've got a far better chance of finishing in the Champions League places if they're not distracted by what they perceive to be a European competition, which is beneath them. So there's that with regards to Juventus. We also have, with regards to Juventus, the previous head of Juventus, Agnelli. He has had his ban from football extended. I think it's to 16 months. For his involvement. The whole board of directors of Juventus resigned when they were put up before the beak, at the same time vehemently denying that they'd ever done anything wrong. Which it's a strange way to react to. If you're charged with something and you believe that you are innocent, then you just act as if you were innocent. But to resign en masse does seem somewhat strange behaviour.
And what's UEFA's response to this, Kieran? Because it seems to me to set a rather dangerous precedent if the bigger clubs in that tournament can say, well, we'd rather not, if that's okay.
Well, it hasn't been confirmed yet. I mean, these are the reports that we've had coming through the newspapers.
Right.
I would imagine that UEFA will say it's less hassle for us. And we will more than happily find another club from Italy to take your place and just move on. I think it was one of the Milan clubs that did similar, probably about 3 or 4 years ago. If you Google Italian football scandal, it does go on for quite a few pages.
Well, also, it's not fair because it's you'll have some of the smaller teams across Europe, and I'm too grown up to say like Brighton, but who will be possibly looking forward to drawing one of the greatest names in European football, and they just arbitrarily decide that that's not an option. Our last question, our last story, Kieran, rather, is an interesting one because it's one that crops up a lot in questions, and it's about basically who owns the personal information about football players, and Fifpro have sort of decided what the answer to that is now.
Yes, we ran a story on a couple of occasions, and this was to do with something called Project Red Card. And this is independent of Fifpro, but this was organised by Russell Slade, who is a former manager for a variety of clubs. And he was seeking £500 million in compensation for the use of players' data. Because I think you could argue that data is personal and therefore it belongs to the players. And this is the data which is effectively being sold either by clubs or by the data crunching organisations. It's sold to, well, it used to be Electronic Arts that used to do the FIFA, but it's sold for computer games. It's sold to gambling companies. It can be packaged and repackaged and then sold on to the broadcasters because we now have an intricate knowledge of players in terms of their individual XGs and their recovery rates and their pressing in the first 15 minutes versus the last 15 minutes. Well, ultimately, this is personal data. It's a bit like saying, are we going to sell, what is Kevin Day's favourite breakfast cereal? We're going to sell that to interested parties and make money on the back. You go, well, hold on, it's my choice. It's my breakfast cereal. Why are you making money on the back of this? So we had that from Russell Slade and Project Red Card, and now Fifpro, the players' union, has said, well, we believe, and this comes under GDPR protection for individuals, we believe that potentially the organisations are not in a position to sell data about individuals. And we're going to build up a database, and we're going to allow the players to effectively either to protect their data from third parties, or alternatively, I suspect this is the route that they will go down, say, well, if you want the data about Cristiano Ronaldo, you've got to pay Cristiano Ronaldo for it. If you want the details about that left back playing for Exeter City, you have to go to the individual, because you're effectively prying into their personal. I wouldn't want my details that go to, if you go to hospital, you don't want those bandied around in public domain. So why shouldn't it be any the same for footballers? It's their career, it's their data, and they're trying to protect their own interests.
Because I'm a generous man, Kieran, I'm happy to provide the data on my favourite breakfast cereal for nothing. And the answer is I don't have a favourite breakfast cereal because I don't like milk. I don't drink.
Oh, really?
No, I hate it, because when I was a small child on a school journey to Devon, a local farmer thought it'd be hilarious to pick on one of the South London kids and get them to drink milk straight from the cow's udder.
It's not nice, is it?
How do you know?
Because we got a farm in Tipperary. I used to milk the cows every morning.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah. So no, I can't. The sight of, I'll have a splash in tea, but the sight of milk.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. Warm milk's not good.
It's warm milk with bits in it, Kieran. Drunk an inch away from another. Terrible. We do know the answer to the question of what the Italian is for financial shenanigans, because we asked it before, but obviously I've forgotten. All I do know is it's not shenanigani, which is I found slightly disappointing. Thank you to everyone who's donated to the pod via our Patreon page. If you'd like to join them to make a small monthly contribution to the pod, that would be very kind. You can do so by going to patreon.com/priceoffootball. We'll be back on Monday as normal, but with a questions pod. And then after that, we've got some specials for you for 2 weeks. Not some specials as in members of the band, but that would be good.
Oh, man.
But if you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. And in the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
Well, thank you as always for all the support for the show, and for those that you're giving us financial aid through Patreon. It's absolutely amazing. The benefits are modest, we'll be the first to admit, but if you want to listen to the show with no adverts, if you want invites to the annual quiz, which, well, more than an annual quiz, you're perfectly entitled to go down that route. But there's another way that you can support the show, and that's to give us a review. It helps us in the charts. We have been as high as number 7 in the Apple Sports charts, which for a niche show is we're very honoured. And it certainly helps us with those algorithms. By all accounts, it doesn't matter what you say as far as your review is concerned. You could even say you would rather have the show presented by Jermaine Pennant and Carol Vorderman. And I'd listen to that. I think that would be a fascinating show, personally.
It would be a very interesting show. They're both, in their own way, very interesting people, Kieran. That's all I have to say on that subject.
The price of football. The price of football.